A reader reacts to the rise of titles like Destiny and FIFA Ultimate Team and worries they're too demanding on a player's time. I'm sure I wasn't the only GC reader to have their cage somewhat rattled by the recent Games as a Service announcement from Square Enix. I think for some it was especially disappointing to read, not necessarily because we were surprised by it, but because of what the company itself means to us. This is the organization that brought us absolutely seminal single-player experiences like Chrono Trigger, Final Fantasy VI, Secret of Mana and many more. You can debate the individual merits of these releases, but what you cannot debate is that a lot of people absolutely love and cherish these games. To hear Square announce that they're no longer primarily interested in making these kind of titles is like hearing them announce they are no longer interested in us, their fans. It really brought home for me that this style of release is here to stay and is only going to become more prevalent. Which you have to accept may marginalize the other types of games that some of us might prefer. You can't fault Square for following a trend that's paying massive dividends for some of their competitors, but it did get me thinking about the issue as a whole. These kinds of games aren't my cup of tea at all, but I accept that they are what a huge portion of gamers want. I do feel there is a bit of a problem with how they are perceived and consumed though. I'm not saying anything new here by opining that games as a service is basically a very 21st century vice. They tap into behaviors and wants that aren't always healthy, and they exploit them to make huge amounts of money for the people producing them. Some of the stories I've read and heard about the sheer amount of time and money people have spent on playing Destiny, The Division, or Ultimate Team on FIFA have made me wince, to be honest. It's very easy to look down my nose at these people, and I'm sure plenty of other readers have caught themselves doing this too. What's harder to do is look at myself and accept that I'm not really much different to them. My gaming habits might be considered healthier than theirs, but I'm still in the pub and the bookies a couple of times a week. That's where I look for my bit of quick hit instant gratification, and their games are where they look for theirs. I'll cop out and not write about the actual mechanics of how these games can become so all-consuming for some. Plenty of much more qualified people have summed it up much better than I could, if you go looking. I do feel that they are very exploitative towards a certain portion of their audience, not all of, and that there's a horrible insidiousness to the way they are designed to keep pulling you back in and demand your undivided attention. And whilst I myself can't say I've never got so into a single-player game that I haven't shirked a couple of things I maybe should have been doing instead, I like to think these games weren't specifically trying to get me to behave this way. With my drinking and gambling, I know these things are naughty and don't do me any good outside of that fleeting bit of transient amusement, and I'm aware I've got a duty of care to myself to make sure that I enjoy these things in moderation, or there could be some unpleasant consequences for me. Am I always successful at that? No. But, normalized as these things are, there are still stigmas attached to them which help me see them for what they are and motivate me to try and keep my relationships with them in a healthy place. I'm not sure the same can be said of these games. Games as a service aren't going anywhere soon, and whilst to me this is very sad, you can't fight progress. The sooner that society stops being overly preoccupied with them, their microtransactions and their pay-to-win mechanics, and puts them into the same pigeonhole as having one too many beers, or chucking a bit too much money away on the horses, the better, in my opinion. By Reader Charlie, the reader's feature does not necessarily represent the views of Game Central or Metro. You can submit your own 500 to 600 word reader feature at any time, which if used will be published in the next appropriate weekend slot. As always, email gamacentral@icmetro.co.uk and follow us on Twitter.